So, without further ado, let's cue the music and start that word chat.
All right, welcome everybody to that word chat. So glad you could be here in sunny Sarasota, Florida. We're at the Southern Studios again this time. I'm here visiting my mother, and I hope I'm sorry about if I'm too backlit. It's hard to compete with the Florida sun. But Martha, is it sunny in San Diego as well
Of
today?
course. You've
Yeah,
been
so
here. You know this. It's very sunny. Yeah, I can't remember the last time we had rain here. But it hasn't been too hot. I've been kind of shocked, that I mean, I have friends in Oregon and Washington State
Mhm.
who have been sweltering, but
I
not here.
I was I was in my mom's little neighborhood has a small pool, and it was 92 degrees yesterday. So
Oh, and
yeah,
humid, right?
yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, in the pool it was 92 degrees, so 100% humidity in the pool, I think. Our guest today is Martha Barnette. Martha's been on the show before, so she's a veteran. But it's amazing because she was on our third show, I believe, pretty sure. And we were doing it when we started. We started during COVID. We did a show a week for a couple of months, I think. And our third show was Martha and Grant Barrett, the co-hosts of Away with Words, which is a word-related a show for lovers of words that I was listening to long 20 years, a long time, probably since Martha was on it. I used to listen to it I think it was on Michigan Public Radio. I was listening to
Yep.
it when I lived in Grand Rapids. So today is we're celebrating because this is the publication day for
Ooh.
Martha's newest book, Friends with Words: Adventures in Languageland. The book, A Stroll Through Linguistics and Etymology, unusual words that she's heard discussed on the radio, that they discussed on the radio show. And it also has some really great details about Martha's life and how she kind of came into this whole world of words back in her youth in Kentucky. It's day one for the book. Are you excited? What's going on with the I don't know, on publication day? Do you like check on Amazon to see what the sales are like and
No,
get
no.
calls to your publisher? Nothing like that.
No, I don't want to do that. I did check it a couple of days ago, and it was
Mhm.
number one on Amazon in etymology, which is like the
There
smallest
you go.
pond, but I'll take it. I took a screenshot of it, but I have an excellent publicist at Abrams Books who used to
Mhm.
publish. She used to pitch me when I was years
Mm.
ago when I was first doing the radio show because she represented the American Heritage Dictionary, and so I was really happy to connect with her again because she's really good and she's got me running. I did Here and Now on WBUR and KERA's
Yeah, I
Think
saw that.
yesterday, KPBS tomorrow,
Mm.
and I'll be on Brian Lair's show on WNYC on Monday. So I'm super excited
Oh,
about that one as well.
yeah, excellent, excellent. So before we get too far from the topic, she represented American heritage. What do you pitch when you represent a dictionary?
Um, I don't remember what she was pitching. I think she represented cookbooks and the
Mm.
dictionary and detective mysteries. I guess this was for Houghton Mifflin, but
Hmm.
her signature was Merds, Words, and Curds, or something like that. Words, Curds, and Merds,
Okay.
because of the topics that she was representing. I don't know. I don't remember what she. I guess she was trying to. I don't know. Get us to talk
Well,
about the
new
dictionary
editions.
more.
New editions. I said, well, I
Yeah,
suppose any
yeah,
mention you get of American heritage, and that's a
yeah.
great dictionary. Did you
I
have a
love that dictionary.
yeah?
I love the
Do you have
picture. Oh,
a
I was going to say I love the pictures of the contortionists. That in each of the
contortionist?
editions they had a photograph of a contortionist, and that's what I remember. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I've got my dictionaries back home in Ohio, so I'll have to as soon as I get home, I'll have to look up contortionist because I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of that. But yeah, but it was such a great resource and such a beautifully put together dictionary.
Yes.
Um, I mean, do you have any? We're going to jump all over the place, but do you have any
I,
thoughts on the state of dictionaries in? I mean, Grant was working with. Dictionary.com, and
yeah.
they got a new owner, laid off all their lexicographers
Mm-hmm.
because who needs lexicographers? We've got all the words already, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts, any impressions on where we are in the state of dictionaries?
Well, you know what? I can tell you more about that when I finish Stefan Fetzis's new book called Unabridged. You will definitely want to have him on that
Ah,
word chat because I've just started that book. I'm about 50 pages into it, and he does a wonderful history of Merriam-Webster
uh,
in a way that I've never seen before. It's called Unabridged, this book, and I'm reading the advanced review copy now.
oh, okay.
So yeah, so
So when does it come out? So it's not out yet. He's been working on that for years,
years, yes, yes, for
but it's
years.
finally.
Yeah, it comes out in October. I saw that we were both going to be at the Southern Festival of Books in Nashville in
Oh,
October, and so I started reading the book, and I'm loving it. So
all
I would
right.
highly recommend that one. But State of Dictionaries, I mean, I was so sorry to see about dictionary.com and what happened there. And beyond that, I mean, I'm thrilled that online dictionaries can encompass as many words as they do now.
Mhm.
I don't spend a lot of time with lexicographers except for Grant. I guess that's all I know. But ask me
Yeah.
again after
Do,
I read Stefan's book because it's really good.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll try to get him. Let's make a note to try to get him in
Yeah,
for October or soon thereafter.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have a go-to dictionary?
You know what I do whenever I'm researching something is I go to onelook.com where I can
Oh yeah.
see all of the dictionaries at once. And
Mhm.
I find Etym Online, which is done by Douglas Harper, is really, really
Yes.
good for etymologies. He's been doing this for a long time, and I don't really know anything about him. I had the impression early on that he was just some guy in his basement, but I mean, I've studied Old English, I've studied ancient Greek and Latin, and everything that I've seen that he's done has been on the money as far as I could tell. I've seen a
Mhm.
couple of things that I want to write to him about, but I think that's really great. And of course, the Oxford English Dictionary, the great pyramid of the English language, uh, you know,
Yeah.
eighth wonder of the world. But I often start with onelook.com.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. So you've got three other books on word origins: A Garden of Words, Ladyfingers and Nun Tummies. Sorry, that's a different book, right? Garden of Words,
Yeah.
Ladyfingers and Nun Tummies. A lighthearted look at how foods got their names, and Dog Days and Dandelions. How does this book differ from those?
This book differs because it's got some memoir in it.
Mhm.
Some of my favorite books about words, I realized, have memoir in it as well and kind of weave the two together. I'm thinking of Corey Stamper's fabulous book, Word by Word, where she talks about her
Mhm.
work as a lexicographer. Sarah Ogilvy's The Dictionary People, about the people who have contributed to the Oxford English Dictionary when it was first getting started. She has some personal memoir, and of course, more recently, Michael Erard's book, Bye Bye, I Love You, about our first words and last words in life. is a
Right.
wonderful book, and it's got a lot of memoir in it too. And I wanted to write a book about words, and my niece kept saying, you've got a lot of good stories. Why don't you
Mhm.
put them in there? And so I thought, well, okay, I'll try to weave those two strands together. That's really different from the other three books, which were pretty much strictly word origins.
Right, right. And honestly, I I'm not not to be insulting. I'm not a huge fan of like really unusual words. I mean, I find
Mm.
them interesting and
Yeah.
compelling, but as an editor, I'm not going to use them. Words are always fun, and so I shouldn't ever be negative about words at all. Um, but I find myself going through the book and just like looking at the autobiographical stuff,
Oh,
which is
yay.
a
Good.
lot of fun. Yeah, and
Good.
I think and reading it, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why haven't you told these stories before?
I'm
Uh,
so glad you said that.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It's so much more interesting because well, you have a relationship with words.
Yeah.
I mean, and you talk about words and we get a sense of your relationship. And sometimes on the show, you'll talk about your roots in Kentucky
Hmm.
and your travels and words you've heard. So we get a personal view, but we don't get the story behind it. We don't get
Mm.
to know the person as much
Hmm.
as you do in this book. And I'm thinking this is such an just the incredible story at the beginning of how you took the Greek tutoring class when you were in college, and this this man who sort of well tell us about that. Maybe just take a few minutes. Tell us about this guy who you met, who sort of enlightened you or helped enlighten you about the Greek origins and the origins of words in general.
Well, I'm glad you asked about. I mean, I'm so glad you asked about the memoir stuff because I really don't get to talk about it on the air, and that was one of the things that was the most fun for me writing the book. And speaking of Greek, when I was listing those books that include memoir along with learning about language, of course, I have to mention Mary Norris's Greek to Me, which
Uh-huh.
um, which is another great example of that. And another inspiration. But yeah, I had Latin in high school and enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. And so when I got to college, I was thinking, well, I'll take ancient Greek,
Mhm.
I'll be sitting around on wintry nights in upstate New York in college, sipping tea and reading Homer in the original. What I found out was that uh, Greek is a lot harder. At least it was for me. There were so many things that were different from starting with the alphabet barrier, as linguists call it, the fact that the letters look different and there are all these accent marks and things like that. I found it just terribly challenging to the point where I decided I studied right up until the deadline for flunking the class, and then I dropped the class. But I
Mhm.
made a promise to myself that I would go back to Kentucky that summer and find some starving graduate student who could put me through drills on vocabulary and grammar and all that. What I found instead was this amazing Latvian immigrant who was a polyglot who was perfectly comfortable in a dozen languages and probably more than that. And he had taught classical languages for many years at Louisville's Bellarmine University. And so I started studying with him, and it was just a totally different way of looking at language. He was really impatient with the vocabulary drills and all of that. And I almost stopped seeing him after the first time, but he made really good bread from the old country. He had a special recipe from old country. And so he would bake me bread, and we would sip very strong coffee together and read Greek. And the way that he taught me was by showing me the connections between and among words. I had my elementary Greek book there, and he said, "No, we're going to read Oedipus Rex," which is weird because I could barely get through elementary Greek, but he started with the word Oedipus, which literally means swollen foot, because his feet were injured
Yeah.
when Oedipus was a child. And um, he pointed out how Oedipus is related to the word edema, which has to do with swelling. They both come from that common prehistoric ancestral
Yeah.
root. And the pus in Oedipus is related to words like octopus and pedestrian and et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, it was a way to look at language with sort of a bird's eye view, or a drone's eye view or something. Um, Seeing all these connections between and among Tocharian and Hittite and Irish and Russian and English and the Romance languages and all the Germanic languages, and so it was a thrilling way to study language in a way that I had never been exposed to before, and so I ended up taking ancient Greek, going on to do graduate work in ancient Greek, and studied with a professor for 12 years until he died. So that's what
Right.
got me started.
Right. A- And so and from there you spent time as a newspaper reporter,
Yeah.
uh, and um, what was the evolution between that, the studying, sort of that inspiration, and ended up going to San Diego and doing Away with Words?
Yeah, I always had sort of a love-hate relationship with academia. I mean, there was a part of me that wanted to go on and be a professor of Greek or something like that. But then I also really loved journalism. I worked at the Bingham newspapers in Louisville, the Courier Journal and the late great
Mhm.
Louisville Times, and I really loved doing that. And for a while, I was the medical writer for the Louisville Times and got to cover some amazing medical stories. And of course, at the same
Yeah.
time, I was always distracted by the medical language because so much of it was poetic. If you know Greek and Latin, it was as if the doctors were speaking poetry to me when they talked
Hmm.
about the coronary arteries, which I'm thinking coronary, corona, which means crown, and crown of arteries around your heart, and related to that little virus with all the little things, spikies that look like crowns, coronavirus, which, gave us COVID. Anyway, that was an unfortunate turn of phrase, but
Yeah.
but anyway,
Right.
so I had this back and forth, and I eventually left the paper, and I was studying ancient Greek at the University of Kentucky, and then this opportunity came up to write a book with the longest living recipient of an artificial heart, and so I did that, and then I ended up freelancing and supporting my etymological habit by writing for Condé Nast beauty magazines, which was silly but paid well and subsidized what I was doing. So when Away with Words started in 1998 with Richard Lederer and Charles Harrington Elster, and they did the show for a while, and then Charlie left. This was based at KPBS. Charlie left, and they did a nationwide search and found me in Kentucky writing books on word origins with a horrible public speaking phobia. Horrible, horrible, horrible. But I
Mm-hmm.
thought, gosh, if I could talk to people every week about my passion, maybe there's a way to get around it.
And you did, and I mean, I think we talked about this last time on the show. This your phobia for speaking, your disinclination to be in front of people. You've been doing the road shows with Grant, and you
Yeah.
did you in San Diego. We had you as the keynote for the American Copy Editors Society annual conference, and you were a natural up there. Is it? Do you still have a little bit of speaking phobia, or are you comfortable now with the audiences?
No, it's one of my favorite parts of doing the show. So that was a transformation that I want, speaking of memoir, I mean, that was a transformation that I wanted to write about. in the book. I mean, and part of it, I think, is just realizing that an audience is rooting for you. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother
Mm,
being there. And that
mhm,
the other thing is they don't care about you. You know, I mean, you're a conduit. You're giving them information, and
mm,
however they get that, that's great. And I write in the book about there was this study. I think I wrote about it for one of the beauty magazines. There was this study of college students where these psychologists had a fellow college student walk into a room with a bunch of college students, and the college student had to wear a Barry Manilow shirt, and you know, which was uncool among those particular college students. And then they did surveyed all the students afterward to find out if anybody noticed. And most people don't notice that kind of thing, or they don't notice it as much as you think they do. So
mm,
so
mhm.
things I realized that things that I was self-conscious about, other people weren't. And then the
Mhm.
third thing that really helped me was working up my courage to take an improv class. Improv, from Latin improvisus, which means never been seen before, related to vision and
Oh,
visionary and visual and words like that. So improvisus is, or visus, as you'd say in ancient Rome, means not seen before. And the wonderful thing about improv is you get out there with a partner and or several people on your team, and even if you fall on your face, you're still moving forward. I mean, what are you going to do? Say, "Oops, I pretended wrong." It was a really
mm,
good way to be in low stakes situations where I could take risks, you know, and fail. And I think that really helped as well.
huh,
And now I get so much energy from audiences
yeah,
that it's kind of a high.
yeah, yeah. It's straight. I'm just thinking about me. You made me think of Alan Alda's wrote a book about improv, using improv
I
as
didn't know that.
communicating. Yeah, it's called. It's a funny, it's a silly title. Would I have this expression on my face if I knew what you meant, or something along those lines. Um,
Put
and he
that book
talks
in the
about
chat.
he talks we talk the reason he talks about improv is he talks about listening, and he
Yes.
says communicating is about listening, and in improv you're not worried about what you're saying. You have to listen and anticipate and know what the person's saying, so then you can do this automatic response. And that's what communicating is. It's when you're speaking, your job is, your job on one level is talking about words, but it's really listening to everybody
Yes.
else talking about words and then
Yes.
having a conversation.
You're
So,
absolutely right, Mark. I mean, you and I are improvising right now. We don't know where this conversation is going to go, but one of the things that one of my improv teachers used to say is all you have to do is bring a brick, not a cathedral. And that was a big lesson for me to
mm,
learn, because if you walk on stage with a whole cathedral in your mind, then you're not listening to other people and you're not taking in what they're saying, and you're not discovering things together. And that's what makes improv so thrilling. And you know, I mean, so many times I would go on stage with an idea, and the other people would have an even better idea. And thank goodness I learned to listen.
yeah. And speaking of listening, we have an audience full of people, and one thing that A Way with Words does a lovely job of is getting into sort of those unusual regional terms or sometimes family terms that people wonder, is it just my family? I've never heard anybody
Hmm.
else say it. Sometimes it's not uncommon, or it comes from a different source. But if you have any questions about that, or about Martha's life or Greek or whatever, feel free to please ask them in the chat. Um, and we will have you come on camera and ask them in the room. Sometimes the conversation gets so intense, I think it can be intimidating for people to say, "Oh, I have a question," but but please,
No.
please do. And I should ask you about, actually, I'll ask you about that in a minute. I want to give you an example of, because last time we talked, years ago on the show, in 2020, I didn't I didn't have this as let me back up. My parents are English, so I've grown up with all sorts of expressions and words from England. Some things I sometimes say that are, I get funny looks because they're not typically said over here. But there's one thing that I never sort of considered when I was young. And only a few years ago did I say, oh, I see what that means. And that was let me tell me if you've ever heard this. When my sister and I would argue, we'd bicker, and usually over, she'd be saying I'm on her side of the back seat of the car, which is totally untrue. But we get into this argument, and my dad would say, "Would you stop arguing the toss?" And he'd always talk about, and don't argue the toss. And I always just assumed toss was sort of the kerfuffle,
Mm.
that we were making. But have you ever heard this?
No,
Or
I
if anybody in
haven't.
the
And now
room
I'm
has
all
ever heard
excited
this, arguing the
to go
toss.
find that out.
Well, it was just suddenly a few years ago. I mean, it took me 50 years to figure this out, but it just struck me. It's from football.
I was
It's
gonna
it's
say,
yeah, it's soccer, arguing the coin toss.
mm-hmm.
When the coin toss is done, it's done. There's no point in continuing the fight, arguing
Yep.
about it. You just have to live with it and move on. Anyway, that's my uh, expression from youth that I have would probably have asked you about if I had actually thought it meant anything, but it never occurred to me that it was that it meant anything other than simply, I don't know what. Anyway, if anybody has an example like that, ask them in the room, and we'll put Martha on the spot and see if she has heard it.
Yeah, I was gonna
Uh,
guess that was a sports metaphor, and I was trying to
yeah,
think, What kind of tossing is done in cricket?" But okay,
yeah,
so a
yeah.
tosser is different, I think. But
Oh, maybe maybe it's cricket. I don't know. It could be
no, no,
because
no.
you're
I
tossing.
bet you're
No,
right.
I think it's
Coin
football and the
toss.
coin toss. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, but I mean, it could be. I don't know if they do a coin toss in cricket to start the game. I don't think so, but could be. Could be.
Ask your mom.
Yeah, I will. I
Yeah.
will
Okay.
definitely. Um, and I asked her before the show, are there any? My mom has this habit of saying things that I have never heard in my 59 years of talking to her. And she'll throw out an expression. I think, where did that come from? And so I asked her about if she had any, and she said she couldn't think of any. So she may wander over and offer some during the course of
Okay.
the show. Let me ask you about, before I forget, I wanted to ask you about the whole um, defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and stations are not getting the funds they were. You rely on a lot of small stations all over the country to carry your show. Does that affect you directly, or is it sort of you're not sort of part of that? You're not getting that money,
No,
right?
we don't get any money from any public radio station or public radio network. A Way
Mhm.
with Words is completely independently produced. A lot of people don't think that. A lot of people assume that we're an NPR show or that we're
Mhm.
affiliated with KPBS. We give the show for free to KPBS because in 2007, when we were at KPBS, it was the beginning of the recession. They ran out of money to produce the show and canceled the show and another local program. And Grant, my co host, and our intrepid producer, Stephanie Levine, and I just thought, no, we're going to keep going. Let's put on a show, which was probably pig-headed and naive, but also really passionate because our ratings had never been higher. We were getting such great feedback from listeners, and we just thought we have to find a way to continue to do this show. And ultimately, we with some other supporters formed a nonprofit to produce the show. But we have always been operating on a shoestring. In fact, the first 3 years, as I write in the book, that the first 3 years, none of us took a salary at all. That's 3 years of no income
Oh,
from
wow.
doing pretty much a full-time job. But
Yeah.
Grant had a full-time job. I was picking up work here and there, and Stephanie was doing similar things, and it was a real challenge. But so in a way, we've had a lot of experience just working on a shoestring. I have people who I think assume that I have like an NPR wardrobe consultant and, and a chauffeur to my events, but nothing could be further from the truth. But yeah, the cuts in funding to public radio stations is extremely concerning, especially for the smaller stations and the rural stations. For us, we're carried by a lot of those smaller stations, so I don't know what's going to happen. But the flip side of that for us is that at least in the short term, it may mean that other bigger stations turn to us and add us to their schedule because we provide the show for free, and we always
Yeah.
have. We make it free to everyone. We exist because of the support of our listeners and a little bit of podcast advertising, and so, yeah,
Mhm.
it's really, really worrisome.
Yeah. Yeah. Has podcasting changed the nature of what you do? I mean, it makes it easier to listen to old shows, of course.
Yeah, yeah, we have listeners who go and download the entire archive. You can go to
Mm,
waywardradio.org and find hundreds and hundreds of past episodes that
mm,
go back to the early 2000s. And some people actually do that. They start at the beginning, and when Grant has this little baby boy, and by the end of
mm.
as soon as they catch up to the current shows, I mean, Guthrie is going off to college this fall, which is wild, and people comment on that. They're like, "Oh, I'm so glad to see that. I feel like I've seen him grow up." So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's wonderful to have that archive. And the other thing about podcasting is because anybody anywhere can listen to it. The show exists because of the third. Um, I don't want to use the word star. I don't know what the right word for the show would be, but it's like a three-way ping pong match, where it's Grant and me and the caller, and
Mhm.
the show exists because of this third player uh, who is who can come now from anywhere in the world. I mean, we get calls from overseas now, and that's a real delight, or from all over the country,
Yeah.
whether they're reached by an NPR affiliate or not. But if you're in a town, by the way, everybody, if you're in a town where we're not carried on your local NPR affiliate, I would ask you to let them know that there's a high quality show that has quite a track record of 2 decades, and we'll make it available for you easily for free.
Yeah. That's amazing. I did not know the thing about you not taking a salary, I'm very impressed with Stephanie Levine for not taking the salary because she doesn't get the fun of actually being on air and being the personality. She's sort of the quiet person in the background. So that's
It,
terrific that she
that,
believed in it.
That's true. Yeah, I think of Stephanie as the heart and soul of the show, really. You don't see her, but yeah, you definitely see what she's done, and she's kind of raised both Grant and me. She was a radio professional for many years, and plucked me out to do the show, and plucked Grant
Uh-huh.
from New York City, and yeah, so yeah, she's really responsible for a lot of our success.
Right. Right. We have you are we were talking a little bit before the show. You are a hiker. You're an avid hiker on the West Coast and in California, and our substitute producer helper Erin, who's been so great. She was been with the show from the beginning. and she's not here every episode now, but she always is willing to jump in when we need somebody to help out. She's a hiker in New England. Um, she and I did southern Utah,
Oh,
Bryce
wow.
Canyon,
Oh,
and Zion,
wow.
and
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Love Bryce.
After the last conference, and that was quite an experience. But anyway, she has a question or she has a comment about something that she heard on the show. So, Aaron.
Hey, Martha.
Hey, Aaron.
So there's a word I learned from Away with Words that I just never forgot. And I wonder if you remember it and can share the story of it. Culch piles.
Culch. Yes. Yes.
Mulch.
You didn't wait, now where are you in New England?
I'm in Massachusetts.
Okay, okay. Yeah, culch is something that you'll hear in Maine particularly, and it means trash, basically, a culch pile. You don't want culch in your dooryard if you're in Maine because dooryard is your yard and culch is debris. And I'm trying to remember, doesn't it come from like oyster beds or something like that? Does that make a like the detritus from oyster beds,
Yeah, I
maybe?
don't remember, but I remember the description of it being, like those little piles all around your house of these little odds and ends. And
Right?
I have those, and I go, oh, there's a name for that. That's a culch pile.
Yeah, I think some people talk about their culch drawers, I mean, we have a junk drawer here, but culch drawers, culch pile. Culch pile it can also be I mean, it used to be an ashtray. People don't have ashtrays anymore, but the little bowl that you empty your pockets into and
Yeah.
put the
The
little
little green containers you get fruit in. I never know what to do with them, and so they're like
Oh,
sit on
yeah.
the counter and gather stuff.
Yeah, those yeah, don't they call those punnets or something like that? Isn't
Oh,
that
I
the
don't
word?
know.
Punnett, that's ringing a bell. I'm sure some wordy person here knows that word.
Well,
Um,
as Grant would say on Away with Words, if you have a culch word that you want to share and ask about, please do so in the room, and we'll try to get to it. And there was a term. Was this in the book? I can't remember where I heard this, but you mentioned a spark word
Oh, yeah.
that sort of got you. So, what's a spark word, and what was your spark word?
Well, this word seems to be getting some traction because I did an interview with a, grammar girl last week, and it
Oh, that's where I've
seems to
heard it.
be
Yeah.
making the rounds now. I mean,
Oh,
I don't know that that's an actual term, but I know that birders talk about the spark bird, the one bird that they saw that just lit up their imagination and made them want to go explore the world of birding. And I think yeah, I think there are a lot of similarities between birders and what I call worders, people who observe words in the wild in the same kind of way that birders do, just with delight and fascination. And so, yeah, I talked with her about one of my spark words. I had a couple of spark words, but I think my favorite word was in Latin class. I came across when I was in ninth grade, I came across the word cross, C-R-A-S, and I found out it means tomorrow. And I was thinking, cross? Procrastinate? Could that be it? And I ran to the American Heritage Dictionary, and sure enough, procrastinate comes from Latin words that mean to put off until tomorrow. It's different from perendinate, which means to put off until the day after tomorrow.
oh, yes, right.
But
Recently learned that one.
yeah, well, yeah, and so I think that was probably a spark word for me because I just started to see these connections that I didn't see before.
Okay. All right. So again, channeling Grant Barrett, if you have a spark word, let us hear. You can, toss it if you don't want to ask about it, toss it in the chat. Those who are watching on video don't get to see the chat, but that, makes it our own special little word club that we appreciate having. Um, so there's an anecdote I have to ask you about. This is hilarious to me that that you met your wife as a caller on the show. So
Yeah.
how did that come about?
Well, uh, I was working so hard on the show for so many years, and I had great friends, but I was kind of lonely, and um, I had been on dating apps and done all these things and just wasn't quite clicking with the right person. And I thought, well, I can't really like announce it on the airwaves, but maybe I can find a way to, use the airwaves to put it out there. And so we had a
Hmm.
caller who called the show to talk about the word X, EX. He had a really great relationship with his ex-partner. He and she really got along really well, and he wanted a different word for X because he felt like X was harsh and kind of, just kind of a spiky word with that X. And so I jumped on that opportunity to say, you know what? I agree because I have a really good relationship with my ex, and she this and her that. And I was just hoping that if I put it out
Hmm.
there, broadcast it, that maybe the right person would be listening. So
Ah.
fast forward a little bit to one of the fundraisers that we did for this nonprofit, because we are always looking to raise money for the nonprofit Wayward Inc. that produces and distributes the show. So we did this trivia night here in San Diego at a pub, and I walked in and I saw this woman from across the room, and I had to know her better. And so she said, I came here to meet you. And I said, well, yeah, everybody kind of came here to meet me. It's an Away with Words fundraiser. And she said, no, 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 I came here to meet you. And I actually talked with you 6 years ago because I called the show. And she's from New York, and she called the show 6 years previously to talk about the words nice and kind because she thinks of herself as a kind person, but not necessarily nice. And so during that call, we had this discussion about the difference between nice and kind, and is nice sort of performative, and is kind something that comes from within. Um, it honestly did not interest me. Grant was interested in it, and the caller was interested in it.
Hmm.
I wanted to talk about the etymology and about how nice originally meant not knowing. It comes from Latin words
Yeah,
that
yeah.
mean not know. And it was sort of like early on, nice meant sort of ignorant. And then it went through a process of amelioration. But anyway, I wanted to
Hmm.
talk about that. They didn't. And so I thought it was kind of a boring call, honestly, like
Hmm.
one of the most boring calls we'd ever had. But I
I think that's
realized,
fascinating though,
I
the
know
because you use them the same way, right?
that,
But they're
yeah.
have a subtle difference. So sorry, I'm interrupting.
Yeah.
Go on.
No, no, you're right. You're right. I've talked to a lot of people since who say, "Oh yeah, that's a really interesting um, point of difference." But I didn't find it interesting, but I realized I was going to have to reassess when I
When
met
you met this.
her. And so at the end of the night, she could see that I was working. She's the executive director of a nonprofit as well. And she could see that I was working, that I was, desperately trying to raise money. And so at the end of the night, she said, I see you're busy. I'm just gonna, because there had been kind of sparks and flirting that, we kept fortunately, the tables were really close together and we kept sidling past each other. But, but anyway, at the end of the night, she said, "You're busy, so I'll just take my leave now." And she put a piece of paper in my hand, and it was the size of a check. And I'm thinking, "Oh, please don't be a check for the nonprofit. Do not be a check for the nonprofit." It is the first and only time ever that I didn't want it to be a check
Hmm.
for the nonprofit. And I was so afraid that it was a contribution to our nonprofit that I couldn't open my hand until I got out to
What
my car. What's that?
why did you not? Why did you hope it was not? Because we were hoping it was something more personal, or
I was hoping it was her phone number.
well, yeah, okay.
Or, a
Sometimes
note
checks have
like,
phone numbers, but
"Gosh,
yeah.
you're cute," or something. But But yeah, so
You were like 17 at the time. Is this right?
no,
Idling
it
by each
wasn't
other.
that long
Oh,
ago. It's like seven
oh,
years
okay.
ago or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, so I'm walking around and shaking hands with people and taking other checks and anyway, I got out to the car and I thought, don't be a check for the nonprofit. And I pried my hand open. I kid you not. I pried my hand open and there it was Bonnie and her phone number. And so I immediately texted her. We had dinner 2 days later. We got married in a friend's backyard 2 years later. And so yes, I still think that she is both nice and kind, but she refuses to believe that.
Okay.
We
Which one is she?
also,
She kind but not nice? Oh,
what's
sorry,
that?
go on. But,
Well,
was
I
it
will
kind
say
but not
that
nice or nice but not kind? I forget.
I will say that, I think a lot of couples have these little linguistic disputes. And
Mm,
our running dispute, I don't know if you have this one, Mark, but if I ask her where's the peanut butter or where are the pliers, she'll say, the peanut butter lives in that cabinet over there. And I just, I'm not supposed to have pet peeves, but
mm.
I always
You don't like the
say
lids.
I don't. I say the peanut butter is not alive. And it's kind of this good-natured um, dispute that we have. But you know what? If you look at Merriam-Webster online, definition 4B in Merriam-Webster for the word live is, I think it's to be stored or located. And I'm mad at Merriam-Webster for that one.
Yeah,
But
but you
so don't
can't.
tell my wife.
Okay, but you can't argue with the etymology. I mean, and
That's
what is?
true.
I mean, yeah. I mean, live. Well, live means has meant live for forever. So
Yes.
this idea of something living in a cabinet is sort of a change to that. But you
Yeah,
can't
but
argue with 4B in the dictionary,
I know, and words have polysemy, words have many
right?
meanings and
Mhm.
develop new meanings, but I don't know. I'm sure everybody here has some kind of sticking point like that, and that one's mine, but just don't
Yeah,
tell her about 4B.
yeah, I got none. There is one. What was it? Um, something. I'm drawing a blank. There's one thing that my wife always says that I always think, no, you mean it the opposite to that. But there are probably scores that everybody has, and it's
Hmm.
really interesting. I mean, I think it's one thing you find out on the show. It's really interesting when you think your first reaction to something is, "Oh, that's wrong." But then when you delve into it, you realize there's a reason. There's like a grammatical reason that
Hmm.
there's Latvian language
Yep.
reason that this has come down to us or whatever.
And I'm
So
glad to hear you use the word delve. I'm kind of
yeah.
upset about AI sort of, how that's supposed to be
Oh
one of those
yeah, that's right.
telltale
That's an
words.
AI word. Yeah, I may
Yeah.
be I may be most of my questions I'm auto generating on AI right now.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
Yeah,
are you
hence
real?
the M dashes. Yeah.
Let me see your
Who
hand.
knows?
Let me
Who
see your
knows
hands.
anymore? Why does
Are
that
you,
mean it make a difference?
well, if you're an
Is that
avatar, you
yeah?
might have an extra thumb or something.
Oh, right. There are only four fingers or
Yeah.
six fingers. Yeah, yeah. No, I'm definitely real. Your let's see how much we have. We a few minutes left.
Oh,
Your you come. I took you back to sort of learning Greek, but it's interesting. You come from a background of like erudite linguistics in your household, right? Growing up.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of the slacker of the family. My brother got a PhD in Russian at a Swedish university. I mean,
Oh,
that's how
really?
smart he is. Yeah, and I didn't put that in the book, but yeah, my
That is
mom was
great.
an
At a
educator.
Swedish university.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he's brilliant. He read Harry Potter in Icelandic for fun.
Uh,
But yeah, my mom was an English teacher, and so I absorbed grammar by osmosis. My dad was a professor of ethics at the Baptist Seminary in Louisville. I always have to say that they were Jimmy and Rosalind style Baptist. My dad was a civil rights advocate, and actually, here's a picture of Dad and Martin Luther
Oh
King
wow.
hanging
Oh
out.
wow.
Um, yeah, they he had Martin Luther King come and speak to his class, his ethics class, and
Oh.
got in a lot of trouble because it was back when Martin Luther King was considered one of the most hated men in America, and
Ah.
yeah, so yeah, and that's I'm so glad that you asked these questions because I don't get to talk about that kind of stuff on the show, and it's really key to who I am.
Yeah. Well, who else are you? What else do you like to? Should we reveal about the real Martha Barnett?
Oh, I don't know. Anything strike
Yeah.
you from the book? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
pretty much what you see is what you get,
Yeah. Well,
guess.
I mean, you're yeah. I suppose you're right. You're very open and very honest and easy to talk to. Um, but But is it no? But I learned a lot about you that we've only talked in person a few times briefly. I remember we had it was it was funny. We did we got together. You and Grant came to join us as the board when the board went to San Diego
Yeah.
uh, in the fall for our meeting before the conference there, and you were sitting like we were almost at opposite ends of the
Yeah.
table. We could have
I
been
remember
further
that.
apart, but it was such a pleasure just to have you there and be able to do the familiar wave. And we didn't get to talk there, but it was so good just to see you. I was at the Grant Barrett side of the table then.
Right, right.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Well, you have to come
um
back.
yeah, well, yeah. Well, you don't get out of San Diego that much, do you? I mean, I mean, you do some traveling, but the show is you've done a little bit of a on the road tour, raising money and doing these live
Yeah.
performances. Did that start before COVID or is that
Yeah,
post
we
COVID?
did we did a 9 city tour right before COVID and did New York and Washington
Mm,
DC and I think Indianapolis and a bunch of other places like that. And Grant and I will be at the Wisconsin Book Festival in October, and then we go to Vermont. We're giving a lecture in
oh,
Burlington, and then we're going to the Kentucky Book Festival. So we love getting out, because I mean, I could have recorded this in my little booth where I record the show. It's I go back in the closet. It's tiny and not very
yeah,
pretty, but and so we love getting out and talking to listeners. And if anybody's in a town with a public radio station that already airs us, tell them we'll come do a fundraiser for them. We love meeting our listeners.
yeah, yeah. So you usually do it in conjunction with the local station as a fundraiser
Um,
then?
Often it's with some kind of organization, and then the public radio station kind of piggybacks on that. Like in
Hmm.
Vermont, it's Vermont Humanities Council, Kentucky Humanities Council as well, Wisconsin
Hmm.
Book Festival. And then because, public radio stations are strapped too, they all need money, and it's
Yeah.
hard to pay to bring two of us there. So usually, or we work with a literacy organization, and then the radio station piggybacks on that.
Right, right. So we had sort of a question in the room. It's more of a comment from Mary Norris. So I don't know if that's
Oh,
a
was it this
question or
one?
not.
Was it this one on the front of the book that says?
It is a delight. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. That was not her statement. I'm sure at the
Okay.
end of the show she'll type in chat. This was a delight. I did think about, reading the Greek stuff about Mary Norris's Greek to me and
Mm,
how
yeah,
you both had that started out with that fascination for the Greek
yeah.
language. No, her question, she said, can you talk about Richard Lederer? Um, you filled his shoes, I guess, at the show.
I'm sorry, the what issues?
Oh no, you filled his shoes,
Oh,
Richard Lederer.
yeah. I don't know that anybody could fill Rich's shoes.
Yeah.
He He's an amazing human being who is still speaking um, all over San Diego, I know, and
Hmm.
continues to write a word origins column, I believe. Um, he has a PhD in English and taught at an exclusive prep school where John Kerry went and a bunch of other exclusive people went, and then found his calling writing books. His first book was, I think, Anguished English or Crazy English, one of those that became a bestseller, and he realized that he could do public speaking, and he taught me a lot about that, and he's written, I don't know, something like 50 books or something, but
Hmm.
he founded the show along with Charles Harrington Elster.
Hmm. And so when you were in when you joined the show, he was still sort of there in San Diego as a presence.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, he still is. Yeah.
yeah, that's neat. I think we have one question from the room that we think we have a couple of minutes we can get to. We could probably get to a couple of questions if they're brief.
Excellent. Jimmy, do you want to unmute and ask your question? We have time after all.
Hey, I'm sorry, I know we're running out of time. I was wondering about your etymological sources. You'd mentioned Merriam-Webster, and I was wondering
Yeah.
if that was your go-to um, source. I usually go to the OED,
Hmm.
but of course Merriam-Webster's great. But I was wondering about that. What is, if you don't already know something, where do you go to find out?
Well, my dad, whom I could talk about a whole bunch, and I do in the book, was born in a log cabin and in Appalachia, and gave me some great advice when I was struggling with a research paper. He said, Marth, milk all the cows you can and then churn your own butter. And so I try to do that. I don't rely on just one source at all. I'm always looking at all the different sources, and Grant taught me a lot about going for primary sources as well. All these dictionaries are great, but people are finding out stuff all the time. We're forever doing deep dives into dictionary databases to see if we can antedate um, the etymologies of this or that word. Yeah, the OED is wonderful. Merriam-Webster is wonderful, but again, I often start at either the OED or onelook.com, just kind of looking at all the different dictionaries, just for a start.
Mhm.
I like
Yeah,
your
are
book
you
collection.
yeah, nice display there. Uh, do you ever have you ever had a fun antedating where you said I mean I like to go to Google Books and look through, put in search terms
Yeah.
and see that a word is earlier than I thought. Is that do you have one that
I can't think of an
you've done?
individual one. Grant in particular is just he's
Yeah,
got a giant database in his head and more on his computer, and he is just a wizard at coming up with those kinds of things. But we're constantly doing that on the show, between the two of us. And
yeah,
so often that I can't even think of one individual one that really stands out.
yeah. I actually I sent a couple into the OED over the years, and one was bow tie, which I'm quite proud of that. And
Really?
I don't remember the details of that. I should look it up. It's probably in my email history. And
Wow.
the other one was horse opera, which was used by um, uh, um, Mark Twain is reading his autobiography. Mark
Oh
Twain
yeah.
used it in like the 1850s or something like that,
Nice.
long before the OED had it. So I don't know if those ever made it in there, but I pass those along. It's what it's what word lovers do, I guess. It's
Yeah,
just a thrill
yeah.
to be able to do that. So. We are, I believe we are out of time.
Did you say horse
And
opera?
yes, Mona, I did say horse opera. As if so, you've heard the term space opera, which is sort of, that's what they called Star Wars when it came out, or Flash Gordon, a space opera. Well, that kind of comes from horse opera, which referred to a Western. Even in the silent period, Western films were called horse operas. And from that, we got space operas. Well, if you go back even further, there's a reference before films, and that is to a big show that involved horses, like what was the big um, yeah, the heat's getting to my brain and I'm drawing a blank, but the big horse shows that they used to do in the late 1900s. Well, this was in the 1850s, I believe, and it was kind of sounded like a big circus show that involved horses. And
Oh,
Mark Twain
really?
referred to that as a horse opera. Mhm.
Oh, I thought it was old westerns on film.
Yeah, and
That's news to
I
me.
think that's what the OED had as the definition.
Wow. Ooh,
Yeah,
that's exciting.
so yeah, that's pretty cool. Anyway, that's enough about me. What's next for you?
Oh, what's next for me? Well, gosh, we're going to keep doing the show and take it out on the road,
Mhm.
and we are constantly fundraising to continue to do what we do. One of the points that I make in the book is that, I've been doing this show for 20 years now, and we still haven't
Yeah.
run out of things to talk about.
Well, then that fascinates me. Do you ever worry that, we've done, I mean, I'm sure you get calls where people have call in with things that you've talked about on a previous show.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Not really. I mean, if it's been years since we've done a particular topic, we'll revisit
Mhm.
it, especially if the caller is lively or has a good story or something like that. It never hurts to go back and do another one. But no, I mean, people are endlessly curious about language, and so yeah, I could see us doing this for a very long time.
Yeah, well, let's hope so. And we'll do whatever we can to keep it going. And it's such a pleasure to chat with you for an hour and get some personal uh, side of your relationship with words. Um, and was the title Friends with Words? Was that your inspiration, or was it usually the publisher comes up with the title, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I wanted to call it Into the Words, sort of like Into the Woods, a la
Okay.
Sondheim.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it was really hard to come up with a title. They just didn't think that worked. I've never ever won a battle over a title with a publisher, never. And so Friends with Words, was just something in a really I was just throwing spaghetti against the wall or throwing, jello against the wall. I sent them a really long list. They really wanted to call it A Way with Words, but we couldn't really do that because that's the name of the show and it's my book.
Right,
But
right.
and so I didn't even remember including Friends with Words on the list. I was just writing a bunch of things, and they really got attached to that. And there was just, it was another publisher battle that I lost. I don't think I've played words with friends ever.
Oh, I meant to ask you that, really.
No, and I'm
I
terrible
used
at
to, yeah, I
Scrabble.
used to, yeah. Okay. You do Wordle though.
I've done Wordle a few times, but I find it frustrating. I
Yeah.
gave up on Wordle.
Mm. All right, all right. Well, we can still be friends, and
Oh, can we?
the
Okay,
book
good,
is yes,
good.
book is Friends with Words. I actually love the title. I think that's a very
Yeah,
nice
yeah, it's
thought.
grown on me. Adventures in
Yeah,
Languageland. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All right. Well, thanks very much. We have a show coming up in September. Nick Norland, he did a new magazine called Paper Airplane, and it's called sort of Highlights for Adults is how it was presented. And this is somebody
Love
who
it.
just decided to. I think he was also with uh,
Dictionary.
dictionary.com,
Yeah.
and said, okay, what am I going to do now? Just for sort of for fun. And so he put together a great magazine that should be a lot of fun for word lovers. So that's the show. Thank you very much for coming, and we'll see you September 16th is our next show. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
Thank you.